officer in Verona and self-employed for 25 years as a general contractor. He's been an ordained minister for more than 20 years, and he and his wife, Tanya, co-founded Life Culture, the Empowerment Center in Tupelo in 2016, which is a mission for the homeless and less fortunate. Moore became a member of Branch 5304 NAACP in 2019. He was elected president the next year and re-elected for his second term. He is also a member of the board of Vigilant of North Mississippi, Board of Directors of Committee for King, and the NAACP Mississippi State Conference Legal Redress. The Moores have 3 children, Sade, Charles Jr., and Noah. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Mr. Charles Moore.
Good morning, and thank you guys for coming out and inviting me. Thanks to, first of all, to ICC, the Itawamba Community College, for this invitation. Also, thanks for the Chief of Police here on the campus and his officers for doing such a great job of keeping you guys corralled and safe. I also thank God for the student union that has the audacity to invite somebody such as me. They didn't look at my track record. Most time I get kicked out of wherever I'm going. I'm sorry, just joking. Well, thank you for being here. And this week in Black History, you're here. Give yourself a hand of praise. There are many people that are still not here that won't see tomorrow. And it's not because of the color of your skin, but some of it is. But today that we stand, I want to talk from a message and a place, I only have a few minutes, talk from a place of knowing who you are and the purpose in which you're here. Don't follow the social construct. Remember, every ideology that you see, someone came up with it. Where you're at now is an ideology that came from someone, and they keep building on this ideology of education. Someone came along after that with free education. Then someone came along with college and institutes called higher learning. Black people for a whole has not always been able to be educated in places such as this. So when we look at Black history, I want you to take a hold of a construct that just in 1965, we were looking for voters' rights as Black people. In that social construct, it was holding the right and the power of the people. In fact, Black people were not considered to be part of a people or a full people by another social construct that held white people or people of lighter color in such high esteem than other people of color. So with that being said, in Black history, if you look at America now and look at the construct of America, somewhere in the deep fabric of America, you will find the hands of Black people. In fact, America itself could not have been America at the place it is now as far as economic value without the slave trade. In doing so, many Black people now are still struggling because of the economic basis in which they were not allowed to, from redlining in the banks, because of the color of their skin or the social constructs in which they lived in or the place in which they lived in. Black people were not able to have the access to economics such as white people. So Black history today, as we look and learn, I want you to understand that some things I'm going to open up. It's not to stir up something, but it's to deal with the truth of where we are now in America and in moving forward. How many of you love democracy? Raise your hand. How many of you understand that democracy is not a color? Democracy is not a religion. Democracy is not a gender. When you look at democracy, then that means everyone should be inclusive where? In democracy. But for as many social constructs that we now are up against, as I look at Jackson, Mississippi has a high crime rate. Jackson, Mississippi, which is our state capital, has poor water systems, but yet in Tupelo, Mississippi, we have the best in the state. So tell me, why is it then, when I just said that democracy is not a religion, neither is it a gender, neither is it Republican or Democrat. It's not a political base. It's a social construct which is inclusive of all of humanity. And rules and regulations and guidelines are set to structure that people, not only will they survive, but have room to strive and go at the next level to explore their dreams and visions and ideas without the hindrance of other people. or their ideologies. But as we look in Jackson, Mississippi, and I asked the question, why is it that our state capital, in the condition that it was in? Some said this here, because black people are running it. Then I drove to Jackson on 5 different occasions. I have to go back to Jackson again. I have relatives that live in Jackson. And so I spent a whole week there researching and asking the questions and looking at paperwork and looking at public documents. And I understood that it wasn't because of a color construct that it was in that condition. It's because of the money that was denied to those people in those areas, and that we have House of Representatives and state senators that are there. The social construct is that black people cannot righteously run things and it survive and strive unless I allow it to. In doing so, I heard the question that I went to the State Hall and I asked one of the state representatives, is there money, federal dollars, for this water system? They said, yes, it is. Is there money and federal dollars for the small ponds that are in the middle of the street? They have large potholes in Jackson if you hadn't been there lately. The infrastructure is failing. And he says, yes, there is. But then he gave me this, but we have to go through committees. When I learned the structure of the committees, then I understood why that the social constructs in which all of you have dreams and visions and ideas for your children and for your children's children. If you don't, you should get them. Because people without a vision, they will never be an asset to the community. They will always be problematic. So those of you that have dreams and visions, hold on to them dearly with the last breath that you have. When I asked him, he says, they have to go through committees. Then I researched and looked at the committees. And I wasn't able to go into the room where the committees were happening. But when I saw the ideology of the committees, where the money was going, did you know that not only does Medicare and Medicaid wants to be cut and held? And I said, why is it? We have people in hospitals, rural hospitals that are going away, that are fading away, and you guys are holding dollars. We have our education system that you guys are sitting on the money for our public education. And not to mention, you now are coming back with private schools that are called charter schools, where simply private schools that at one time state law said they couldn't be funded. Why am I mentioning these things? I'm mentioning these because the people that sit in this room now will make laws tomorrow. The social construct that's in Jackson and in D.C. is a social construct that's so strong that unless you conform to the image in which they have already created and continue to uphold, then they will somehow oust you and your voice will go silent. If you see me today as I leave as a black man, you missed my point. Because as I'm sitting here, I don't see a place of black and white. I see humanity who wants to move forward. But when you allow this social construct to say that you're a black man or a white man or a woman and it doesn't fit you because you're a female, or you're a man, it doesn't fit you because you're a male, then you just now placed the line of demarcation where all of the trouble and chaos lies. I have to look at you as a man, a humanity, a human. And in human, there's a gender of a male and there's a gender of a female. In human, there's many colors. And the social construct that comes out of that says that one is less than the other. When you leave this place, and how many of you will confess to be Christian? I don't want you to raise your hand because you may offend somebody else. How many of you will confess to be Islamic? I don't want you to raise your hand because you may offend someone else. How does that offend you if you have not conformed to the social construct that's here? Then it wouldn't offend you. You will still know that at the end of the day, they are still what? Human. But here now we stand and we have guidelines that are set in place only for certain groups of people. And we have laws that are made for certain groups of people. And I look at now that, as we call in our group, we looks like apartheid. If anybody know what apartheid is, many of you too young to understand or even know what apartheid is. But when you look up the definition of apartheid and you see how some of the laws and some of the confusion and things that are happening around us, it seems like we have people amongst us that really don't respect humanity or our God. Because I remember John 3:16 that says, God so loved the who? With all of us in the world, that he gave who? His only begotten son. That if you would believe in his social construct and not their social construct, Paul says in Romans 12:2, be not conformed to the ways of their age or their social construct, then you can show forth the good and acceptable and perfect will of the God that you say you love. Rather than by name, but by action. Jesus was not called the Christ in the beginning, although he was still the Christ. He was only called the Christ by what? His works. Christ simply means the Messiah. And they couldn't identify who the Messiah was until they saw his what? His works, his miracles. Then they said, you art the Christ. People's work is beginning to identify who they are. Rather than in political mayhem, it's hard to figure out until they actually get into office. I want to give you some things here, some dates of things that have happened. And now in no way am I telling you you should need to go do these things. So let's get that on record. Here's some dates here that some of you may not know of, you may, and many of you may. This is a civil rights movement that happened, some of it started in 1951. On April 23rd in 1951, there's a walkout at Robert Russell Morton High School. 16-year-old Barbara Johns leads a student walkout of Robert Russell Morton High School in Farmville, Virginia, in protest of the school's poor condition. I have addressed Shannon High School. I've addressed the superintendent of education concerning the conditions, not only of the administration, but also the conditions of the school, that if you live in Lee County, your tax dollars, if you live in Mississippi, your federal dollars have been going to that school. I've addressed them concerning their education and the miseducation of students and the lack of safety there. In fact, in November, if you remember, I probably was on the news. My phone was confiscated because of 2 students allegedly having or engaging in inappropriate situations in the school. Wasn't the first time it happened. But my phone was confiscated in order to do their investigation, and they have an officer on campus. And they have, watch this, over 600 others' phones on their campus. But they got mine, the NAACP president, because I made the statement publicly at a school board meeting, Lee County School Board meeting in November of 2022. It's a predominantly black school. Was that the reason I was there? I was there because I was called. Civil rights is not just for black people. Civil rights is for, say it with me, humanity. Civil rights is for humanity. But when it's unequally adjusted across the board, then we have groups such as the NAACP, who is formed by predominantly white people and a few black people in 1909. Yes, there were white people that actually formed the NAACP in 1909 because they saw how black people were being disenfranchised and treated by law-abiding citizens. Did I say that? That was an oxymoron? How were they being mistreated by law-abiding citizens? Because the law then did not work for who? Black people. And so they created policies and they legislate against policies that won't allow people that look like me or the color of me to be treated fairly. We're now in conjunction with the state and the national government to actually move forward on legislation that will actually have schools publicly funded. Our universities, we're asking them now to not only fund Mississippi State and Ole Miss, And Southern Mississippi is the third, at least one funded. Mississippi State over Michigan get all the money. So if you're a Bulldog, Hail State. If you're an Ole Miss Rebel, go Sharks. But anyway, in the midst of where I'm at now, I want to say this, is that we as a civil rights organization, as it relates to black history, we're making an indelible mark that says that tomorrow's students will not be looked at by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, as Martin Luther King said. That tomorrow's students will actually not have to subject themselves to the social construct that their forefathers and their grandmothers grew up to, but will be able to create their own social construct. That tomorrow's students' dreams will not be watered down or thrown away because of the community they came from, or because of where they grew up, or because of their beliefs, or because of their preference of religion, or because of their preference of genders, but because they are humans. It's not that you get to exact your right on someone else because your daddy had the most money because of the color of your skin, because that's the way it's been, that's the way it's always been. It's because you treat people the way you want to be treated. Respect is always given for me. Y'all get that? I've always given respect until the one that's receiving it no longer deserves it. So I don't look at you based on who or where you came from or what you have, because I get to sit at the table with all different people, nationalities and groups of people from economic statuses and however, gender-based. I don't get to sit just with certain people, and I don't choose to do that. But in these numbers that I'm talking of, I want you to see that in 1954, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. begins his pastoral at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, May 17, Brown versus Board of Education. The U.S. Supreme Court rules in Brown versus Board of Education that American public school should be integrated. 1955, Emmett Till's murder. Now with the Brown versus Board of Education, I want to tell you something that tragically happened there. That tragically happened. Almost at the same time that Reconstruction happened, these things were happening, but in a different time zone. Brown versus Board of Education, when they agreed, they later integrated later. And when the integration came, black people lost their identity. Because in the process of integration, they chose what teachers would come over. They didn't go to the black community to be educated. Black kids their schools were actually shut down. So guess what? Not only were they uprooted by the federal government, but all of their history of who they were and how they lived was left out of the public school system. Even today, when they talk about CRT has never made it to the elementary or the high school. It was no intention to bring it there. It was a construct that the politicians put out that was tell people beforehand, before you would even go and do your research, that this is the ugly truth of America and Mississippi. It's not that your students are actually racist, but that racism has been a part of America since the inception, and until we embrace it, we can never outdo racism. How does racism exist? It's because when you look at me other than just being a man, you follow the social construct that black people could never be this or never be that. They're always angry. They're always hothead. They're thugs. I think I'm the biggest thing from a thug. I think in my days and times of fighting, I think I did less fighting because of my size and my family. I come from a big family. So the Moors were somebody in Houston that didn't bother no one. I had 9 brothers, 4 sisters. So we didn't bother nobody. We had our own basketball team, part of a football team. We didn't bother people, and people knew that, hey, they're not gonna bother you if you don't bother them. We worked in the farm. Dad had a 40-acre farm. So we grew our own food and our own crops. And we would learn on that. The number one thing is you have every ability in you to grow what you want, work how you want, and eat what you want if you will only put forth an effort. I've always believed, and I believe it even now, is that the social construct of America does not garner my thoughts and hold me to a place where I can't grow. Because I understand that how the system is. I understand how the research that I've done on America and how the system itself has come back and how it was actually started. I understand all of this. But I understand today that I was never a slave. Neither will I ever be. Neither were you ever a slave owner. Neither will you ever be. But in the event that we look at black history and we try to whitewash history as if it didn't happen, then you become a part of the social construct of America that is demeaning, deplorable, and most of all, unacceptable. America is one of the greatest countries in the world, but we still have work to do. Black history is much a part of the fabric of America as any cultural place in the world. I understand this. I live in the greatest country in the world. I understand that my ancestors that still live in Africa live in one of the greatest continents in the world. How do I know this? Because America still goes back and draws raw materials from them. Other countries still come in and try to siphon stuff from them and still doing it. And in my visits and voyages going back to Africa, I love the scenery. Why? Because I understand the rich history of a people that's proud, a rich people that actually have greater things than I've ever seen or imagined. Black history in America today cannot be looked at just by the slave trade. If you look at black history, and that's as far as you go back, as to when they came over on the ships in 1619, over 400 years ago, then you missed black history. You don't understand black history at all. You see the degradation, but you don't see the super side of black people. Some of the greatest mathematicians in the world, when you look at the Sphinx, black people. When you look at Egypt, which is a part of the continent of Africa, that cannot buy the social construct of the world. When I look at Israel, which is a part of Africa, the continent of Africa, I cannot buy the social construct that is separate. That somehow America has painted and the world painted as the Middle East, but all of it is part of the continent of Africa. So when you fathom these things in your mind and you go back and you remove many of the braces that's been put on your mind, if you really want to see what black history is about, you have to go beyond America. You have to see that we have created a sustainable place here in the world, in America, through creating social constructs that won't allow you to go further than what you see. And that's how we control and manipulate each other. That's how we get the Republican and the Democratic process. That's how we get the hate and the racism and the separation and the demarcation that we still are fighting today. That's how we get the kids that are calling it other kids because of the color of their skins and demeaning them. If we are people that love God and that believe in God, then we have to believe that black history, not only is black history and a place to be reckoned with, but black history, which if put in numbers, the millions of blacks here in America being the largest consumer according to data, if they were a country, would be the 13th largest country based on economics that's spent here in America as a consumer, as a whole. The 13th largest country just by spending power. But yet it seemed to be that black history is something that's to be embarrassed. Black history has been relegated to just a month. How do we deal with racism? Let's stop talking about it. Let's stop talking about it. You are a lady. Do I have to say you're a white lady? Let's stop talking about it. You're a man. Do I have to say you're a black man? Let's stop talking about it. When I see her as a woman, and I love my wife who's a woman, and I want you to respect my wife as a woman, then I'm going to give you the same glorified respect. And you never have to ask for it. That's how we stop racism. That's how we change and set the goals for black history. Because prisons were built and multiplied. If you remember, during Prohibition, during Reconstruction, because of black people being free, the hatred and the cynicism and the evilness of a few people that spread it out to the masses, and they accepted it, that these people don't deserve anything else. So prisons, overpopulated now. The largest Christian country in the world has the largest population of prisoners. Is that not an oxymoron? But Jesus, the Christ, came to do what? Set them free. But the social construct find ways to imprison them and disenfranchise them, that crime rises in the black community. And so what do I do in the black community to change crime? I stopped talking about it and being an example. Because what changed my life with learning about Christ was the work that I saw him doing. So what's going to change their lives when I talk about things in my community and in the world? When they see the work that I'm doing. So today, if I want to change black history, then I have to change the social construct about who? Black people. Your belief about me, if it adds up to my work, then you're good. But if your belief about me does not add up to the work that you see me doing and the work that I've done, and there's many accolades that we do here in North Mississippi, and our ministry do, that many of you may not even know about. But if the work that I'm doing says that I'm for America, then why do you tell me when I disagree with you, go back to where you came from? And I say, to my mother's womb. They get offended. I said, because that's where I came from. But I was born here in America. When I look at the Moorish people, and I hear about Christopher Columbus, and I look at how it was intertwined into black history until I separated and found out that Christopher Columbus, they said, didn't even come into America. He stayed in the islands, but he was given credit for discovering America. So when I look back into it, he was never attached to America, but the social construct, which we many times do not go beyond. We set our beliefs upon things that we hear without ever proving them. So I'm going to encourage you in my closing, don't lose sight of the vision that you have of one America. Because the power is of the people, by the people, and it's for the people. Don't allow the politicians to take us to a place to where we can't return, while they strip your Social Security and seek to shut it down, but keep you separated on abortion, on race, on gender issues, that you make those social constructs in your leading and making decisions in our local community. All politics is local. Make Lee County, make Chickasaw County, wherever you're from, make it your personal bet that if black history is going to be anything great, then it starts with me. I hear what was said years ago, but what about now? Where do we go from here to challenge that black history remains a growing part of America? Why do we have to acknowledge that black? Y'all see the separation there? You see, when I said black, it automatically what? Isolated a group of people. And where does you sit if you're not that color of people? Why can't we just honor people for their accomplishments and move our communities and countries forward? When I invite people to come, I don't say they're a black or a white guy to come to speak at our ministry or to go fellowship with me. When I go to meetings, I don't say I'm going to meet with my white brother in Christ. I hate that. Or my black brother in Christ, or my Hispanic brother in Christ. They just happen to come to the table and they recognize, oh, he's meeting with, that's your meeting? Yes, sir, this is my meeting. We are the reason we are where we are because of the decisions that we make based on what we hear. In 1968, a young man was born. And as he was a young boy, and I'm getting ready to close, as he was coming up as a young boy fighting with all the other men folk in the house, he says, "Mama, I love you." And she says, "If you love me, then stop fighting your brothers." 5 minutes later, he was making another fight with his brothers because one took something that was his. Mama came in and says, "I thought you loved me." He says, "I do." He cried and cried and cried and went to bed. Got up the next morning, he says, I'm not going to fight either one of my brothers today. One come by and kicked his shoe. And he jumps up to hit him. And the brother says, "Oh, you scared, huh? Mama ain't here to defend you." So, guess what he did? He showed his manhood. He fought him. Mama came home. She said, "I thought you loved me." He cried and cried and cried. It happened again. This time they took his shoestring out of his drawer. And he had it dangling in front of him. He wouldn't give it to him. He said, "That's my shoestring. Could you give it back?" He says, "Take it." His brother told him to take it. So he went to get it, and he thought about Mama. So he went and took his shoestring. So then he gave it back to him. Mama came home. He says, "Mama, I didn't fight today." She said, "But yes, you went and stole something that wasn't yours. Your sister told me." He said, "Mama, how do I win?" She says, "From within." From within. You win from within. Your vision, your dreams are from within you. All of your joy that you'll ever experience will come from within you. All of the hate that you'll ever give will come from within you. All of the peace that you'll ever experience will come from within you. Paul said it well. The good that I would do, I found myself not, because I found out that there was something in my members that was sin in me. The social constructs that are on the outside of you were created by somebody else's idea that was on the inside of them. So to bring America together and to move Black history forward, because like I said, I don't like the month, because you cannot relegate Black history to 28 days. Because we're that great of a people with all the inventions, from a refrigerator to stoplights to so many different things that was created, that we all enjoy. That when she told me that it was, you win from within, and she explained it to me, and I understand that transformation is a thing that doesn't happen with my hands. It's something that happens within my mind, my heart, and my spirit. Going forward in Black history, I want you to hold true and hold fast to your dreams and your vision. Be proud of the many faceted colors of gods that you are. Be proud of the strength and abilities that you have that are different from other cultural people. Be proud of the language barriers that are there, that cause us to come together to communicate, to find out who we really are, and to appreciate what we're not alike in. There's some things that I don't like about the Black community, but there's a lot of things I love about the Black community. There's some things I don't like about other communities, but there's a lot of things I love about other communities. But I make the changes where? In me. That the greatness that I am and will become will not be because of you or you, but be because of how I'll approach the destiny that's before me. In closing, Black history is so much a part of American history that it should be just history. The raw deal that's been given, and we must understand and agree that the ruling party that's been in America from the inception of America has been predominantly Eurocentric. And I understand that. But I understand also the transformation that how people have come to love and respect and honor humanity. We are the greatest thing that God ever created. If you believe that, raise your hand. Now, as you have your hands up, that takes nothing from nobody else. That just acknowledge that I agree that I am. And with my greatness, I'm going to do what? Help to change America. I'll never overshadow your greatness because it's not my intentions. I can never overshadow your greatness because when we work within who we are, we're going to always complement and bring light to the other. When our light shine, all the room is affected. So if I got all the light shining in here, then when we go out, all of the world will be affected. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, for the encouraging speech. And as a token of our appreciation, we would like to present you with this speech.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and y'all have a great afternoon.